Good evening, everybody. All right, I'm responding to someone. I don't know the name. Sorry, I don't remember, but I did jot down the question. Uh, Person wanted to know what the difference would be between an SSI benefit and SSD benefit in amount. Now, that is something that is of such magnitude. You need to know that SSI is based on a maximum federal benefit rate. It is for the indigent. There's other videos on what the criteria are, aside from you having to be disabled for both programs, what requires what for SSI and what is required for SSD. But setting that aside, the SSI, which is a welfare program, will max out. The max you could get would be in 2024, $943 from the federal government. That is irrespective of any local benefit you might get from your state or your county or a local government, due to the fact that you have an SSI award. SSD is your Social Security that you have earned to date in terms of what that coverage amount is, your primary insurance amount. It is not welfare. It is not anything other than that. Is it a compulsory insurance that we have to pay for? By and large, yes. But it is an insurance. So the amount you pay in over your working years is going to come to some sort of calculation. And in a nutshell, I can say that it's assuming we go till retirement age to collect our Social Security, and I'll get to the disability in a moment, they will take the biggest 35 years of income you have. That may include some zeros if you didn't work 35 years. So be it. 35 years goes into the calculation. They find out what your average monthly earnings was, and it's indexed for inflation over the years, but your average monthly earnings over that 35-year time period. And from that, they then apply a formula to get to the primary insurance amount, PIA. For disability, obviously you didn't get through 35 years. Well, you might have, but many people have not. So if you started at 20 plus 35, you're 55, you get disabled, you do have 35 years, but you're not old enough to retire. So you have to prove you're disabled. For the younger people who did not have the opportunity to work for 35 years, or those that just simply didn't, maybe they were child rearing, didn't realize that not working even a little bit can have this kind of limiting effect on the PIA, primary insurance amount. They're not going to be held to have done 35 years. First, they have to prove that they're insured, so they worked enough to have insured status for SSD, which also includes that recency test where you have to have had, for people over the age, as we get older, 20 quarterly credits earned in the last 40 quarters. So that's basically, it could be the most recent 5 years you worked and earned 4 credits per year, or you could have it stretched out here and there over the last 10 years. Does not have to be full-time work, just enough to earn those credits, which is pretty low. And once you show that you are of insured status, then you get your case figured out. It's medically worked up. They decide if they find you disabled. If they do, the primary insurance amount will be based upon the work you've put in. They are not going to add in a bunch of zeros to make 35 total years because you now have the benefit of avoiding that because those years are considered disabled, okay, up until, from this point forward, or from the point of your onset date that was determined to exist, the EO date, established onset date, which may or may not be the same as the alleged onset date that you claim. It will really depend on how vigorous your medical and other evidence is, mostly medical, when you apply. So we have all sorts of strategies on that. But so your SSI is going to be limited to, and often less than, $943 a month. It gets reduced for any other income you might have coming in. SSD can go up to the high 3,000s if you're one of those kind of workers that made significant money and maybe met that income cap for many, many years. Probably made more than the income cap, but they only tax you up to the income cap. I can talk. And it can be as low as well under 1,000. It can be under the SSI amount if you were a very minimal worker, but worked enough to achieve a benefit at all. Some people work a little bit and don't achieve that because it is so minimal. But once you meet the burden of the basic minimum requirements to get a benefit, to be insured, then the amount that you will be collecting as a benefit amount, an insurance coverage amount, if you want to put it that way, is determined by what you paid in. And I think I was reading that the average is now in the high 1500s of all collectors, I suppose. I don't know if it broke it out any further than that, but I thought that was good because just a few years ago it was like 12 something. So the average is rising, and that's probably has to do with cola, guys, because we've had some excessively high colas. I shouldn't say excessively. We shouldn't really need those colas. And it would only be excessive if inflation is excessive. And I do have an opinion that cola never comes close to covering the cost of inflation, or the basket of goods that they base it on just doesn't really reflect what we're buying. I never saw 8, 9%, which is what was the year prior's cola, 2022, I think. I've never seen one of my grocery bills only be 8 or 9% higher than a couple of years ago. They're way more than that. I think we're at least 50. So don't know where that, I don't do the math. I don't do the bean counting. But it all has to do with that basket of goods that they use for the index to determine the inflation. But in any event, our benefits do rise with the COLA. And of course, so does that average. And that's why that average is probably growing. I don't know necessarily that it's due to anything else at this point. Although if wages rise, that would also be something that would raise one's PIA if they're still working and earning a higher wage. But in any event, okay, I'm losing my voice and I have a big meeting later on tonight. So I'm going to cut this short, but I hope that addressed your question. Whoever asked it, the difference between SSI amount and SSD amount. If you really want to know more about the details of what you need to have to get SSI versus SSD, and I will say flat out, SSD is better. SSI is the welfare because you didn't quite do it well enough to get the SSD, but the SSD brings you Medicare and other great things. SSI often brings you Medicaid. Don't get me wrong, there are some definitely important benefits to that, but you do have the thumb on the pulse of your neck the entire time. It's a lot more onerous of a set of rules compared to SSD. But anyway, multiple videos on that. So I'll let you have at it. Have a great night, guys. Bye.